Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Lord, may the word spoken here today be of glory to you and all who hear it. Amen. Before he died, Billy Graham was returning to Charlotte after a speaking engagement, and when his plane arrived, there was a limousine waiting to transport him to his home. As he prepared to get into the limo, he stopped and spoke to the driver. "You know," he said, "I am 87 years old and I've never driven a limousine. Would you mind if I drive it for a while?" The driver said, "No problem. Be my guest." Billy gets into the driver's seat, and as they head down the highway, a short distance away sat a rookie state trooper operating his first speed trap. The long black limo went by doing 70 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. The trooper pulled out and easily caught the limo, and he got out of his patrol car and began the procedure. The young trooper walked up to the driver's door, and when the glass was rolled down, he was surprised to see who was driving. He immediately excused himself and went back to his car and called his supervisor. He told the supervisor, "I know we are supposed to enforce the law, but I also know that important people are given courtesies. I need to know what I should do because I have stopped a very important person." The supervisor asked, "Is it the governor?" The young trooper said, "No, he's more important than that." The supervisor said, "Oh, so it's the president?" The young trooper said, "No, he's even more important than that." The supervisor finally asked, "Well then, who is it?" The young trooper said, "I think it's Jesus because he got Billy Graham as his chauffeur." I thought you'd like that one. Well, this is really putting me out of my comfort zone. I think I've been up here once, maybe when Pastor BK was pastor here, and I did Laity Sunday one time, and I thought, "Ooh, it was tough, and you know, the nerves or everything." So anyway, I thought I can do this again. So of course, when Laity Sunday came, Denny was not feeling well, and I was supposed to be up if he couldn't do it. So he was well enough, which I'm so glad you were, Denny. So now here we are again, and Pastor Jimmy said to me, I think it was at the end of December, he says, "You're coming and speaking in January when I'm on vacation." And I said, "Oh, I am?" And he goes, "Yeah, you are." So here I am. So I kind of reconfigured everything, and I just didn't quite know what to say. And I've been talking to God for weeks now, like, give me something that you want me to say and guide me through this. Well, Monday at Quartet Plus practice, it finally hit, and he's just been throwing Bible verses at me all week long, even to the point where I got an order from My Pillow. There was a Bible verse in there from Ezekiel, and it was just like, wow, he's really speaking to me this week. So anyway, God has a master plan for our lives, and that plan does not change. It's a plan designed specifically for you. It's a plan that God intends for you to live out fully, beginning at the moment of your birth and continuing until the moment of your death. God's plan for you has a purpose, a blueprint for your particular life, a character development plan, a communication plan, a call to service, a guidance plan, and a blessing plan. Your destiny is to be the person God has created you to be. I just thought that was really nice. God gives us all abilities and talents to use for his purpose. We need to use those talents and our abilities to spread the good news of Jesus, or our lives are not worth much. I know I was put on this earth for a purpose. God has given me so much to be thankful for. I know if I had never accepted the invitation of God to be my personal Savior, I would probably not be here today at church. But as Christ would have it, He has made me the person I am. It's been trying at times, very trying, but without Him, I would be nothing. I grew up on a farm, not far from here on the Wendell farm. My dad and mom, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were on the farm. My brother Donnie is fourth generation on the farm, so it's been in our name for over 100 years now. And you can't say that about too many farms. But we grew up, Mom and Dad were great parents, the best you could ever have. They raised 4 girls and a boy and sent us to Sunday school and church every single Sunday, and if you were not sick, you better be there. So my dad lost his father when he was about 6 months married, so he had a lot of stress put on him the year he got married to take over the farm and manage it and farm it. So with all of us kids, he expected us to work, and we did. We'd go get the cows in. My sister Nancy would drive the tractor. I'd hang on the back and then get off and get the ones that were farther out, and we'd take them up and they'd milk them. And I think Dad had about 150 cows to milk twice a day. So you don't really do vacations when you have cows to milk. And all kinds of problems happen when you have animals. They get sick, they have trouble having their calves. We also had chickens, so we had to gather eggs. And it was a lot of work, but we all pitched in and made it work as a family. We ate together as a family no matter what time. My mom would go up and help milk, and sometimes it would be 11 o'clock at night before we would have supper, but Dad always wanted us to eat as a family, no matter what. So, but we did well. About when I was 10 years old, I was in gym class in 5th grade at Octorara Elementary, and we had Mr. Boffman. I think Carol remembers Mr. Boffman, and some of you others. He was teaching us a class on volleyball, which I really liked. But when I got home, I said to my mom, I'm having a lot of back pain. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, my dad had back pain and had issues with his back and wore a brace. So this went on for a little while, and then it got to the point where you couldn't ignore it anymore, so we were going to the doctor, and he'd put shots in my back, and finally they sent me to an orthopedic surgeon, and they said, oh, your leg is shorter than the other, which it wasn't. So then they sent me to DuPont Institute in Delaware, and back then they didn't have MRIs in the 70s, so they took x-ray after x-ray, and I think it was probably 30-some x-rays by the time they figured it out. Well, I had a tumor on my spine, and they didn't know whether it was benign or cancer, so they never told me that. So I was in a ward. This was before the new hospital that they built. I was in a ward with, I think there were 4 girls. We were all having back surgeries of some kind, some for scoliosis, and mine was different from the others, but you have to prepare, so you had to go a couple days ahead of time. And so my chart was at the end of the bed, and so I had nothing else to do, so I looked at it, and it said, possible, this tumor. They didn't know if it was benign or cancer, so I was like, oh, they never told me that, and at that age, I was 13 at that point, finished 8th grade. I was going into 9th grade, and they did surgery in that summer, so then the tumor was benign, but they just don't know where it came from. So they fused my lower back, and they put me in a body cast, which that's what they did back then, and it was from here to my knees, and then they put a bar between your legs and cut out certain areas. And so my mom had to take care of me for those 6 months. Well, I think the only time I cried was when it was the first day of school, because I was going into high school and couldn't go. So I could just lay there and look out the window and see the bus going by. So not all the teachers came to the house, but 2 of them did. And they taught me my math and my English. And the science teacher, he just sent stuff home for me to read and some rocks. So social studies, I taught myself that year. So, but it all worked out. I went back to school probably in February or March, because I had to learn to walk all over again. So you kind of lose your balance, your equilibrium when you're laying in a cast for that long. And when they took the cast off, it weighed 50 pounds. So you're just a bowl of jelly, because you've lost all your muscle tone and everything. So you're like paralyzed when you first get out of a cast like that. So I learned how to walk, and my brother Donnie would take me to school in his car. And he was, I think, a senior in high school, I think, yeah. So he didn't want to be seen with his sister, dropping her off. So he, kind of moved back a little, like, she's not my sister, So, no. So anyway, but we got through that. And during that time in the cast, the ladies from the church that we went to, Friendship Methodist, they would come and teach me my Sunday school lesson every week. And certain ones that knew how to play the piano, I knew when they were there, because they'd sit at the piano and start playing a song, which was so nice. But I really befriended a lot of the older ladies in the church, and it was so, so nice. And I got to know them personally, and until they left us in this world. But I don't know what my life would have been like if I hadn't had those ladies come to the house. And someone sent me a basket of goodies, and I could open up a present like once a week, I think it was. And that basket was from Cochranville United Methodist Church. And Eleanor Alexander, who used to be the organist here, her and her son and her husband put this basket together, and it was just so nice that people thought of me, and I didn't even come to this church. So they planted a seed. So you never know where you're gonna plant a seed in somebody's life, but it's important. And I think of my dad out on the tractor. He was in the fields a lot, but I think that was his time he spent with God. And he loved his animals, he loved nature, and he loved his family, and he loved his God. And I just think, now I know why he was out in the fields so much, because he was out there talking to God. So, but anyway. So then I got married, had my first child, and I was 25. And the doctor, when I had my first back surgery, told my mother that I would probably have problems having children. And she didn't really say anything to me about that for the longest time. Well, then when I told her I was pregnant, she's like, you can't, because you're going to have problems. And I'm like, Mom, So anyway, first pregnancy went fine. The second one I lost early. The third pregnancy was Kevin, and I had him at 6 months. I was pregnant. That was tough, very tough. He was 1.75 pounds. He was 13.5 inches long. And he lived about 13.5 hours. And he came out crying. And in the process, they hit an artery on me, so I was hemorrhaging. So they told my husband, they said, I'm not sure she's going to make it or the baby. So he had a tough time there for a while, thinking he was going to have to raise his daughter by himself. But Kevin was a strong little guy. His lungs weren't mature enough, so they collapsed. So they were putting chest tubes in him. And then the doctor that put the chest tubes in, she hit his spleen in the process. So we had that to contend with. And then he got a brain bleed. So things were not looking well for Kevin. So I got to hold him, and he grabbed my finger, and he never let go. And then he passed away, and of course I came back okay. But in that time when they weren't sure I was going to make it, I saw the bright light, and it was so bright, and I did not want to come back, because there was something better for me out there, and I knew it was God calling me, but it wasn't my time yet. So I came back from that. I could feel the blood pressure cuff, and my husband was sitting next to me, and the nurse came in, and she says, oh, there she is. She's coming back. So I think sometimes when we have these kinds of experiences, it just brings us closer to God. He was born on Good Friday at 12 noon, right when Christ was crucified on the cross. So Easter for me is hard, but it makes me really understand Christ dying on the cross. I think it just really, some years are good, some years aren't good coming to church on Easter, but I've got a double reminder there, and I understand that loss. So I know in our Bible study one time at Dell's, we had a thing out here at church where we had stations, and there was the hammering of the nails. Well, that just really, it just really brought it to life. And thank you for those stations, because that really, really made it for me. But what I'm telling you is, you need to have that relationship with God. It's okay to believe in God, and you pray to him once in a while, but if you don't have that relationship with him, it's really, life isn't much fun. If you try to do it on your own, you need to trust in Jesus. And I know when my little Kevin was dying, I prayed so hard, and I asked for him to keep him here, but that wasn't the plan that God had for him. So someday I'll get to see him again. And I lost another baby after that, so I just had a hard time carrying babies. But we have Chad here. He's my other one. So, but it's just love your children, because you never know. And I just don't know where I would be without Christ in my life. And I depend on him very heavily now, even more so as I get older. And I just can't emphasize enough to have that relationship. Talk to God, because he talks back to you. And I think the lowest part of my life when I lost him, that was when I was closest to God. He really showed me that I needed to trust him with my whole life. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Matthew 6:34 says, so don't be anxious about tomorrow. God will take care of your tomorrow too. Live one day at a time. And then in the mail this week with my pillow, I got this verse that was in the package, and it says, "I will give you a new heart and with new and right desires, and I will put a new spirit in you," from Ezekiel 36:26. That's when the Israelites were not doing well and God was not happy with them, and he was going to save them. God does not want remodeled hearts, but brand new ones. He doesn't want a reform in character, but a new spirit that loves to do his will. He wants transformation, not mere accommodation. This is why Christ came, to completely change our lives. Now, I was going to read you before the quartet sings again, Faith to Carry On. The words in this are just beautiful, and I just think maybe I should read this before we sing it, and then you can feel it more. At the break of day, as I waken and pray, I can feel that God is near, guiding all I do, ever faithful and true. I will never need to fear. Though I may not understand all the things that God has planned in my life, I know I am not alone. God will give me strength to carry on. Though I never know what the future may hold or the trials I may face, I can ease my mind with the comfort I find in the promise of God's grace. When there's sadness in my heart and my life seems torn apart, I will find a way to rejoice each day. God will give me hope to carry on. When the storms of life surround you, you will feel God's arms around you, bringing comfort where there's sorrow, giving hope to face tomorrow. At the break of day, as you waken and pray, always know that God is near, and he is near, guiding all you do, ever faithful and true. You will never need to fear. Let each moment that you live be a chance to love and give. If you always start with a joyful heart, God will give you strength. God will give you hope, and God will give you faith to carry on. Thank you.